and welcome to the Farmhouse. I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
And I'm Stephanie Spiker.
Recently, I spoke with Amy Marciano, founder of Sugar Mutts Rescue and Skymeadow Farm Sanctuary, a 501c3 nonprofit animal rescue in Greentown, Pennsylvania, which is in the Poconos area. Amy started her work in Brooklyn, where she founded the Sugar Mutts Dog Rescue in a warehouse. But after about a decade, she moved her operation to the Poconos, where she and the dogs had a lot more room. She then expanded into taking in farm animals from owners who are no longer able to care for them or who have been rescued from neglectful situations. Amy also offers horse boarding at Skymeadow Farm, which goes toward funding the rescue and farm sanctuary. Steph, you actually have a personal connection to animal rescues, don't you?
I do. My dog, Suki, named after a Gilmore Girls character, because everyone always thinks it's a different show. But anyway, Suki is a rescue. I got her from a dog foster program. It's called Furry Friends Network. And basically they get dogs from shelters that don't have space and they foster them and then you adopt from there. So Suki was found originally as a stray in West Virginia. And I learned when I adopted her that West Virginia actually has a lot of issues with stray dogs. So their shelters typically get really full. So yeah, they didn't have space for her. The shelter that rescued her, they didn't really have space to keep her. So she ended up with Furry Friends. And she was the very first dog I met and looked at and got to know. And I knew pretty immediately that she was the one for me.
When you know, you know.
Yeah.
It's very important work, and I'm glad people are out there caring for these animals, not just the dogs, but the farm animals too. So let's let Amy talk about her rescue operation and what it means to her. Amy, welcome to the Farmhouse.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So let's dive right in. What inspired you to start Sugar Mutts and Skymeadow Farm Sanctuary? How did those two operations come to be?
The one word answer to that is animals. I pretty much came out of the womb loving animals. It was just in my DNA, and it was a journey. Obviously, like most things are, but pretty much I started working in the field in dog rescue in New York City, where I lived at the time, and I worked in shelters. Both for the city, so like the rough kind of public side of animal rescue, and then I also worked for the ASPCA and larger um, animal rescue organizations. And after several years of doing that, I realized that I didn't like either sectors for different reasons. Obviously, working for the city, it was heartbreaking. There were
I'm sure.
yeah, I mean, I got offered a job to run one of their shelters, and part of the job description was making the daily euthanasia list, and I was like, nope, I can't do it. I can't.
Yeah.
I just can't. That part of it with especially just domestic animals, dogs and cats in particular, the ones that are in our homes, and it's the overpopulation aspect of it is just, it's devastating to work in that field, because you pretty much have to play God and decide, oh wow, do we have enough room for this dog or this cat, or whose behavior is determined as deemable for adoption and or not, and it's very difficult emotionally. So I ended up starting my own rescue. I was like, you know what, I won't be able to make as large of an impact per se, doing it alone. But there's a quote that I pretty much live by, that I'm gonna screw up the exact the exact sentence, but it's basically, you can't change the world by rescuing one animal, but for that one animal, you change the world.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. It's the only way I can look at it, because otherwise you do nothing and you get bogged down by the overwhelmingness of it. So yeah, so I started Sugar Mutts in 2007. I had developed a lot of great relationships in New York and in Brooklyn, with fosters and volunteers and people, just having worked in the field prior. So I actually ended up finding a lawyer who did some pro bono work for us and got us our
Sure.
501c3 because he believed in what we were doing and loved animals himself. So that was a process to just get your 501c3 in the first place. Took years, actually, a
Right.
couple
Yeah.
years. But once we did that, we started fundraising a bit and started out as being foster based only. So I would pull dogs from the euthanasia list or the kill shelters, or sometimes it was owner surrenders, people who couldn't keep their pets, and rather than them ending up in the shelter, we would take them in directly. And then eventually we opened an actual facility, a warehouse space in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which was a really great experience. We only lasted doing that for 3 years because of the financial burden of renting in New
Oh, I'm
York
sure.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and having staff and having, no outdoor space, and having to walk so many dogs every day. Um, but the one thing that did enable, or kind of lead to a philosophy that, for us as sort of a nonprofit business model is we were like, oh, you know what? People who have dogs and who've, or let's say the privileged dogs were providing income for the less privileged. So one of the ways we funded the rescue space and having it was we did doggy daycare and boarding. So people who own dogs could pay for their dog to come play all day,
Mm-hmm.
and they were mixed in with our rescues who were for adoption. So we had the space to keep the dogs for adoption, visible, and also have, people provide a service for people who had dogs already. So it was kind of cool. And a lot of times, those clients who had dogs would end up adopting a second dog because their
Nice.
dogs
Yeah.
their dogs would get along well at daycare. And that actually happened for my best friends. They ended up sort of being like, oh, that dog there, like she's getting along well with my other dog. So what? Tell me about her, kind of thing. So yeah, so it was a great experience, and we had a lot of like young people on staff, young adults in from the neighborhood, and it was really a wonderful experience, but it became a financial headache, obviously. And we had sort of fallen in love with an area in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. This is pre-COVID. So, things up here were very, very affordable, and you could buy space and land. And so we actually decided to buy a property in the country to move the rescue to. Um, Total game changer. I mean, the dogs had huge spaces, outdoor spaces, and were able to run around, and people would still come up from the city to meet them, and it was really, really fun, and we were able to house a lot more dogs. And that was the big transition from like doing it in an urban setting versus the country. so so then, of course, I can never sit still, I guess. I don't know. But I did, obviously being now in the country, I was like, I really want to expand. I mean, I love dogs, but I love dogs as much as I love pigs and chickens and lots of other animals, and they all, need some help too. So I ended up actually working or kind of helping out, volunteering at a farm in the area close to where our dog rescue was.
Mm-hmm.
And just serendipity, it was serendipity, really. The owner of that farm had owned it like 50 years and was looking to sell it. And I didn't know that because I didn't know him and I didn't know the story. But after several months, basically offered it to us, to take it over, to buy it. So we did, and here we are. So now we have the property itself was called Skymeadow Farm. So the name of our nonprofit is Sugar Mutts Rescue, but now the actual physical location is Skymeadow Farm.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's sort of the name of the property. And yeah, it's 35 acres. We now have 2 Airbnb cabins on the property. That's one of the ways we fund the rescue. It's a very big way we fund the rescue. We, instead of doggy daycare, now we board horses.
Right.
So we have about 27 horses on the farm, and roughly like 12 are sanctuaried rescues, and the others are boarders. So it kind of aligns with that. The more fortunate horses are contributing to the livelihood of the less fortunate. Sort of like the doggy daycare.
I was gonna
But
say it's like a scaled up model, I guess, in terms of
exactly.
size of animal, probably
Yeah.
size of cost to keep
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, so we have pretty much everybody on the farm. I mean, pretty much if it's a farm animal, we have at least one of them. We have 2 alpacas, we have pigs, we have a couple cows, there's horses, sheep, goats, donkeys,
Yep.
geese, ducks, chickens, all that. So, so that's sort of the backstory. That's how we
Okay.
got here.
You kind of talked about how the dogs come to you, but farm animals kind of different. So how do you typically find yourself acquiring farm animals for the sanctuary?
Well, probably the most common animal to be rehomed multiple times in their lives is a horse. Mainly because they live a long time. They're very expensive to keep.
Oh, yes.
You can't keep them without land or somewhere to properly house them. So, it's pretty rare that a horse has one owner its whole life. We generally just, people can't, there's maybe a death in the family or financial hardship, or I mean, you name it. People can no longer keep their farm animal or their horse. So it's pretty common, that we get requests to help or take in a horse, let alone other farm animals. Like, just an example, we had a gentleman and his son who bought a bunch of baby turkeys, like like ordered them online, from a hatchery, and were intending on raising them to appropriate age and then using them for food, which is what turkeys are bred for in this country. So, and most countries, but then when they got to that age, he didn't have the heart to, off with the head. So he asked if we could take them and let them live their lives here, so that's an example of like just something like that will happen, or people get, chickens or ducks, and when they're babies, because they're adorable, and then they can't house them and they're messy, and or their neighbors complain that one's a rooster and it's yelling all the time. So, we get all, there's a lot of scenarios that come up, and that's pretty much how the farm animals end up with us.
So is there any one particular animal rescue story that stands out in your mind from your time there?
There's several. A recent one that I thought was kind of interesting was, I'll try to condense the story, but basically this sheep, her name is Midge. She's a black-bellied Barbados, or Barbados black-bellied bat. That's a say that 5 times fast breed, but Barbados black-bellied sheep. And she's really cute, and it doesn't look like your normal sheep, normal just fluffy white sheep. She's really unique looking. And apparently she was living free roaming and living at a resort in like Shawnee, PA, which is a kind of more touristy area of the Poconos, where people visit and vacation. And she was for like 3 years wandering around a resort there and just living, and there were rumors about it, how she came there and her story, and a lot of the guests knew her. But it just before this last winter hit, the powers that be said, you know what, I think it's time Midge goes to a sanctuary or goes to a farm. We're not a petting zoo. She sometimes takes naps under people's cars in the parking lot. Like it's not a great long-term plan for a sheep to be in a resort. So, we ended up getting a call from a couple who were on vacation there, and sort of were like, we'll help. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon and wanted to help get this sheep to safety and out of, resort life. So yeah, it was funny. But apparently she escaped at some point from a farm in that area.
Wow.
And this one woman, Nikki, who is just a wonderful, wonderful woman, she worked at the resort, and she had kind of watched out for her, and Midge trusted her like no one else. And after several attempts of going to try to catch her, Nikki ended up being able to actually walk her right into our trailer. So so now she's here at the sanctuary, and she's amazingly happy. She's in a pasture area with three goats and two sheep, and she instantly gravitated toward the sheep. Like she knew she was a sheep,
Interesting.
even even though she was living as a solo girl for in a human world for years. She knew, she's like, oh, those are my people, and she she bonded right to the other sheep. So yeah, so she's awesome, and Nikki comes and visits her all the time, so that's nice.
Well, that's great that she's able to reconnect with her friend.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Those sheep will wander. We just
Yeah.
had a funny story this from this past holiday season about a group of sheep that were part of a live nativity scene that broke out and went for a walk, and
Oh my
a
goodness.
neighbor found them on their like their camera outside their door, and we have a picture of like the sheep that they look like they're looking right down the camera as if they're saying like, "Hello, let us
Yeah.
in."
Oh my goodness. That's funny.
Yeah. Are there any educational or community outreach programs associated with your sanctuary?
So we,
Mm-hmm.
in on a small scale, the answer would be yes. We've only owned the farm for just over 5 years. So, the last several years have been a lot of
Mm, sure.
work. A lot of figuring out how we're going to make this work financially, putting up the cabins, doing a lot of fencing. I mean, the whole farm, we refenced the whole thing. We went from wire that was falling down entangled everywhere to like safe like board fencing, wood fencing. um we're actually trying to finish one section today on that, but yeah, so we haven't done a lot of focus on that yet, and that is something we would like to do, and get more involved with that. We do like we do tours. We have people come, walk around, meet the animals, get their backstories. We do that by appointment. We are going to be working with, hopefully, with one of the high schools to have, high school kids do community hours for college or applications, whatever. We've done stuff on, like specific
Mm-hmm.
day projects, like with groups, and one thing that's really unique and that we'd like to do more with, is the farm, obviously it's women owned, and I'm married to a woman, and we are very inclusive, and we try to make sure that kids, teenagers, anyone who's going through anything personal can find the farm as a safe space and be here, just to be themselves, be around animals. Animals are really therapeutic. Taking care of something outside of your needs is super therapeutic. So we have a lot. We've sort of been unintentionally, I guess, developed a niche for that demographic of just people needing a community, and also just with the climate currently in our country, it's something I feel like is even more important, like just to be inclusive in general in life.
Yes, very much so. And I think there's something there, like you said, how important it is to experience having to care for something outside of yourself. It's like it unlocks like an empathy
Yeah.
within you that is always there, but sometimes I think some people need it to be, kind of brought out a little more.
Yes, totally agree. Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, I'm sure that funding is a major part of this, but what are some of the biggest challenges that you face running a farm sanctuary?
Yeah, obviously, hay, hay is hay is our probably our biggest expense. You just use so much of it. Every animal pretty much on the farm eats hay. And it's it becomes a lot of work, especially in the winter, just to keep that 24/7 access. And, we go through probably, I'd say close to 3,000 bales a winter, square bales of hay. And then that's on top of the big round ones that, are 4 by 5, feet giant bales of hay. So, we probably use 200 of those and easily 3,000 plus bales of square bales. So, that's I'd say just the logistics of that, having somewhere to store it. So you're not running to the other farm to buy it every couple weeks, and having it stored actually on the farm. We can only store so much, and we just literally depleted our, winter stash. So now I'm going to buy it as we need it until the grass comes in and it cuts it down a little bit. Um, but I would honestly, I mean, I know it seems like a typical answer, but yeah, it's funding. This is anything to do with animal rescue. Funding is usually the issue, because with money you can hire help. With money you can, make life easier. You can put up storage buildings for hay. You can, so without it, you're improvising constantly. And in a state where winter is no joke, especially this winter was rough. It's just keeping things funded. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's the greatest job in the world, honestly. But yeah,
I mean, that's awesome to hear. I mean, and like you said, like funding is a reality. That's, you got to keep the lights on. You got to keep
yeah,
the animals fed. That is what it is.
yep, exactly,
So,
yep, yep.
a farm sanctuary, it can mean a lot of different things to different people, depending on, how they feel about various issues. What are some misconceptions about farm sanctuaries that you'd like to clear up?
Well, I don't ever like to speak for other people. I can only say what we do and what's important to us and how we want to do, things. Um, but I do think that, a lot of people um might think that, oh, if it's a farm sanctuary, it's going to be real preachy. It's going to be, you have to be vegan or you can't step foot on my farm, or you have to. And I 100% respect that. I think that, I am no fan of the factory farming industry in this country at all. It's pretty brutal. I mean, there's no question. However, I also think people, in order to change their habits, or maybe partially change their dietary habits, or their social, awareness of animal welfare, they have to be exposed to it. And if they're already feeling like, oh, they're probably just crazy animal rights people who don't eat honey, or you know what I mean. Like, if they have that idea, they're less likely to get involved. They're less likely, they don't want to feel judged if they happen to still eat meat, or if they, you know love their cheese or whatever. So I try to, I mean, I think that is sometimes a
Hmm.
fear maybe of people going, into that setting. It is not, going back to being inclusive. I mean, we're very open. Like, people are people. People make their own decisions the best they can with what they are dealt in life, and whatever your choices are, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. You know, that's fine. So yeah, I think I try to educate as much as possible. I'm even personally not vegan. I'm vegetarian, but I'm not vegan. I try to buy, cruelty free dairy products when I do. But yeah, I mean, we like to try to keep that door open and make sure people understand that animals are sentient beings. I mean, you spend any time around any farm animal,
Mm.
they're just like dogs and cats. They really are. Like, they have personalities. They know when, you're bringing food or not, and how to get what they want out of you. They love attention and affection. They're intelligent. So that's a gift to be around, and to see that, and know that they're safe,
Yeah.
and they're not headed for, Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. Like, they're here and they're living and they're happy, and we try to make their lives the best we can with the resources we have. So
How do you balance the emotional toll of rescue work with maintaining your well-being? Because, obviously this is a passion of yours and you care about these animals, but, sometimes at the end of the day, like, there are sometimes tough decisions that have to be made. So how do you balance all that?
That's a good question. I think the best way I can answer that is that quote that I love. Literally, I mean, whenever I feel like I could be doing more, I'm not doing enough. I should be rescuing, going to the shelters and getting these dogs out, or going to. I just have to regroup and bring it back to, if I am too overwhelmed financially, emotionally, I can't do anything. So you have to take it one step at a time, one animal at a time. um and I also have a lot of support. I have an awesome team here at the farm. And my wife is an amazing support, when she's not working her job, which is crazy. She travels a lot for work. We try to do a lot of fun things. We try to enjoy where we live. We, love to go out for drinks. We, we go on vacation when we can and separate. You just have to. You can't eat, sleep, live, and breathe. No matter how much you love it and care, you can't eat, sleep, live, and breathe one thing in life ever, because it will eventually just it'll just deplete you. So so yeah, I mean, I go back to that one at a time. If it doesn't get done today, it'll get done tomorrow, and that's okay. If it doesn't get done tomorrow, it'll get done next week, and that's okay. you know, you have to practice that mindset.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice that can be applied to a lot of different situations.
Definitely, definitely.
So, what does it mean to you to be a woman in ag?
I think that's the first time I've ever been called that. And it's awesome.
Hey, you're on a farm, you're working with farm animals. I think that qualifies you.
Yeah. No, that's great. I guess I am. Yeah. um, what does it mean to me? I think it means exactly what it says. I mean, it. I will say that I get a lot of sideways looks on the road when I'm driving my F-250 with 200 bales of hay on it, and you can't even see out the rear of my truck, and guys at a red light are like, "Wait, that's a girl." Like, it's crazy. Like, a lot of men, especially old school farmers in the country, are like not expecting to see a chick doing that stuff. So so it's pretty fun, and I've made some amazing relationships with a lot of the, like, local guys here that just are, it's like mad respect. They're like, "You guys got this, you don't need us." so so it's kind of cool, and it took some years. It took a few years to make those relationships. But and I mean, I am constant. I did not grow up on a farm. I learn this every day. I learn something. And I love, that's part of what I love about it. But yeah. So I don't know. I guess it what it means is it's I dig it. It's good. Yeah.
That's awesome. Great to hear. Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I loved hearing about your sanctuary. It sounds like you guys have a great operation up there. I say up there because we're down in Lancaster, so you're a little north of us.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you for the invite, and for listening to my story. I appreciate it.
So I always think it's interesting to hear from people who may be vegetarian like Amy, but can still be respectful of the fact that many people aren't. Because I think many of us out here who do eat meat, myself included, believe that raising farm animals for food is not an inherently bad thing. I kind of like the Temple Grandin approach in that I believe animals can and should be raised ethically, and that they can have good lives, and that when they do go to slaughter, painless deaths, just because an animal will eventually have one bad day, that doesn't mean that they can't have a good life.
Yeah. Plus, I think inherently, the majority of farmers treat their animals well and with care.
Agreed.
Obviously, there's always a bad apple in every bunch, but I think in general, farmers do care about their animals, because as we've talked before on the show, you know, a healthy, well cared for animal is going to produce a better product than one that isn't. So, but it is nice, especially, I thought it was cool that for the most part, Amy gets animals from people who just no longer can keep them. So it's, you know, the story of the turkeys where it was like, oh, they realized like they just couldn't slaughter them, so they sent them to me. So now I have all these turkeys. Like, and you know, in those cases, I mean, these animals still need a home and they still need somewhere to live and someone to feed them and care for them. So it's great that there is a place that is so willing to just take on these cases and take these animals and make sure that they are happy and cared for in their life.
Yeah, it's a happy ending to their story.
Yeah. I also loved how, you know, she talked about when she was in New York with the shelter dogs and the doggy daycare, and how the doggy daycare dogs kind of helped bring the rescues out of their shells a little. And now it's the same with the horses, where the horses that she boards kind of help the horses that come in from maybe neglectful situations. And that's just such a sweet thing to think about, like, you know, horses who are just hanging out there and living their life and being like, oh, hey, like, come on, we got you. We'll show you around. We'll teach you the ways. I love that. That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming to think that, like, oh, come in from the storm.
Yeah.
Like, we're all friends here. Yeah, it's very cute. All right, well, that about wraps things up for us. We are going to be taking a few weeks off. We'll be back on May 15th with more FarmHouse. But in the meantime, if you'd like to hear more from Steph and I and a few other people here at Lancaster Farming, you can check us out on one of our other podcasts. We have a podcast called Farmer Wants a Wife After Party, where we sit around and we recap and dish on the latest episode of the Fox reality show, Farmer Wants a Wife. It's a lot of fun. Steph and I are both on it, as well as a kind of a rotating roster of our coworkers.
Rotating cast of characters.
Yeah, and we it's a fun time, so we encourage you to check that out. Thank you all for listening. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. If you really like this episode, please consider leaving us a review.
If you have any questions or thoughts about this episode or the podcast, you can email us at farmhouse@lancasterfarming.com.
You can also find us on social media at Lancaster Farming on most platforms.
Thank you again for listening and visiting the farmhouse. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Candace.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
This episode of The Farmhouse is copyright 2025 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family.
It was written by Stephanie Spiker and Candace Wierzbowski. It was produced by Eric Herlock and Sophia Kurzius. The music is by Tin Bird Shadow.